When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Your best friend or your worst enemy? I see both. On one hand, I see the guy that makes things happen. The guy that wants to climb any mountain in front of him. But on the other hand, I see the guy that is destructive to my goals. The guy that stays up late at night watching YouTube and, more recently, Attack on Titan. The guy that indulges in bad habits. The guy that just kind of gets in the way. It feels like there's these parts of us that are fighting a war with each other. Today we're going to talk about how we can harmonize this internal conflict by turning our worst enemies into our best friends. So let's go into the abyss. You know those games of sport where one team gets their ass handed to them, and at the post-match conference the captain says, yeah, we just didn't turn up today. How many of you live your life like that? How many of you are not turning up for yourself? Neglecting your health both physically and emotionally, staring at a phone that you don't want to be looking at, eating food that you don't want to be eating, and doing habits that you don't want to be doing. I live by myself now, but one of my old housemates told me once, all I want to do is watch TikTok and rot in bed. And I responded like any reasonable, healthy individual would by saying, are you okay? And she said, yeah, why? And I said, well, you literally just told me you want to rot in bed. It's like, yeah, Josh, it's just a saying. This fucking generation, man. God damn it. That's the abyss disguised as self-care. That's the lowest form of yourself. That's your worst enemy. Marcus Aurelius, a former Roman emperor and one of the more famous Stoics, once said, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. To emerge from the darkness, you must kill the enemy that's holding you there. So where do you turn? Let me introduce you to the mercenary. When you're in the abyss, sometimes you find the motivation to change. That's when the mercenary emerges. A mercenary is an individual you hire to eliminate your enemy, and they will walk towards that goal without mercy. For the mercenary, it's all or nothing. How many of you have found the motivation to make changes in your life, and you poured yourself completely into it only to give up when you didn't see the results? And even if the results were achieved, why do you think 90% of people who lost a tremendous amount of weight eventually put it back on again? They ran out of funds to pay the mercenary. The mercenary is not your friend. He doesn't care about you. He only wants your money. And with that payment, he'll purchase any tool to get the job done. Extreme diets, training workout programs, app and website blockers, a very strict daily schedule. You build all these structures around yourself to prevent your enemy from advancing, which is all well and good, but if you don't have the wad of cash to hand the mercenary, you're fucked. The mercenary is not sufficient to keep the enemy at bay by himself. I'm happy that self-development is becoming more mainstream. When I first started going to the gym in 2018, self-improvement was still a very fringe thing to do. But there is a glaring problem with this community. It seems like everyone is yelling at you to improve your body, go to the gym, eat better, improve your aesthetics, have better style and grooming, improve your finances by, for example, starting a business. And let me be perfectly clear here, none of these things are bad. I recommend you all to be doing them, if that's what's important to you. However, it does become problematic when there is extreme judgment if you're not making gains in all areas of your life. And this is the underlying tone from some self-improvement influencers like Fresh and Fit. If you don't satisfy the criteria of a high-value man, then you're worthless. This isn't too dissimilar from how we talk to ourselves. There is a higher version of ourselves watching from higher up that mountain, looking down on us, judging every move we make and every turn we take. He's not happy when we're making progress because that's just expected. But if we stumble, then oh boy, that's unacceptable. You see the look on his face, it's one of disgust, shame on you for stumbling. The mercenary was the one who was ruthlessly trying to get the job done as long as he's getting paid. He's on the ground level with you. But this guy higher up in the mountain, he's a tyrant. He's hypercritical and disapproving. He uses embarrassment and humiliation to motivate you to improve. But this doesn't come from a place of wanting to be better. It comes from a place of not wanting to be bad. And that's completely different. The message here, you might think, is to be kinder with yourself, to love yourself more. But I disagree. I think self-love is bullshit. Well, at least the way it is presented in our culture. Indulge yourself, pamper yourself, seek out your desires. There is a teaching in Buddhism. Craving and desire are the cause of all unhappiness. Everything sooner or later must change. So do not become attached to anything. Instead, devote. Both Buddhists and Stoics believe that there is one universal constant, and that is suffering. There's a quote from Seneca that says, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When you are focusing on self-love or self-improvement for that matter, you are signaling to yourself that there is something wrong with you. You don't fix things that aren't broken. You're creating an imagined reality where your suffering is greater than in your actual reality. You indulge yourself into your own selfish desires, which only further descends you into the grasp of the enemy. This is what Western culture and the self-improvement community get so wrong. There is so much emphasis on the self, on the individual. What can I do? What can I achieve? What can I gain? We are simply creating a generation of narcissists. And it's fair to say that self-awareness is at an all-time high, but mental health is at an all-time low. There's a really good quote from the author Catherine Boyle that sums this up. For too long we've been told we can be anything, do anything. And all criticisms of that anything are an attack on our identity and very being. That self-love and self-care are all we need to thrive. And yet we've seemed never more miserable, never been more lost, and never less confident in what we stand for. So far I've talked about the enemy and the roles that we take to defeat that enemy. But if you remember at the start of the video, I asked you, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Your worst enemy or your best friend? So what if your worst enemy was actually your best friend? Richard Schwartz wrote about your worst enemy in his book called No Bad Parts. He describes the part of you that wants to descend into the abyss as an exile. Exiles are the youngest and most vulnerable versions of who we are, sometimes referred to as our inner child. They're often the parts of us that have directly experienced some kind of trauma and then took on the burden of those emotions, leaving them trapped in the past. Schwartz describes 3 reasons why some parts of ourselves becomes exiles. First is a caretaker or peer responded negatively when we showed vulnerability. You were vulnerable and someone you trusted hurt you. 2, a caretaker or peer responded negatively when we were too exuberant or active. This is the idea that kids should be seen but not heard. 3, an emotional response to being hurt was criticized or shamed by others. Bullying, for example, teaches you as you are right now is not good enough. Those parts of you then become exiled, and you form other identities like the mercenary, the tyrant, and the narcissist in order to protect their friend. All these parts of you are your friend, trying to protect their friend from experiencing any more harm. But like your actual friends, they are kind of dumb. They don't know how to express themselves and they don't know what's best for you. The mercenary believes that willpower and discipline is the answer. Don't allow yourself to feel. Block it, drown it, suppress it. Keep moving forward no matter the cost. You can't feel pain if you are numb. Even if this was sustainable, it's not, but let's say it was, you're not solving the actual problem here. You're just trying to mask it with other distractions. It's just another form of avoidance. The tyrant higher up the mountain appears to be a leader. From a distance, it looks like he's trying to show you the way up the mountain. But when you look closer, you see that what he's actually doing is very different. At the core, the tyrant has a scarcity mindset. He believes that you are not enough and that you cannot have enough. To the tyrant, everything is always going wrong. He is defensive and closed off to the world because he cannot risk having his friend below him hurt. So he throws negative comments at you. Fear, shame, embarrassment are his tactics to get you to do the right things. Not because he wants you to become more than what you are, but because he cannot bear to see you become less. The narcissist is solely focused on themselves. They believe the path forward for the exile is to become self-obsessed. They say things like you are enough, you can do anything. Just love yourself more, practice more self-care, because the other reality is going to hurt the exile. And that is something that simply cannot happen. When you look at it from this point of view, you don't have enemies. All these parts of you are your friends. They are just trying to protect you, but they don't quite know how. The answer is to become the best friend that you have always wanted but never had. The friend that listens to you, that understands your story and empathizes with it, who encourages you to go explore, fail, and learn despite the risk, who allows you to feel bad when things go wrong, who inspires you to persevere through discomfort because he knows you will grow, who is always observing and providing feedback, but without judgment. Be that friend for yourself, but also for other people, because it's not just about you. You'll see that your exile feels less exiled, because you don't have enemies, you only have friends. So let me know what you think, because keep in mind this is all theory, and I'm just a dude who has gazed into the abyss and saw the abyss gaze back into me. But when you look into the darkness for long enough, you begin to see the light. And with that, I'll see you next week.